a few days ago, President Muhammadu Buhari constituted a committee to assess the impact of the coronavirus on the economy, with the likelihood of cutting down the 2020 budget and reduce the $57 oil benchmark.
Oil affects everything. As a matter of awareness, obvious.
The government has swung into action as economic experts seek solutions on how to salvage the impact of the disease on the nation's economy. The coronavirus, which has spread to over 100 countries, has led to a fall in the price of oil to about $30 per barrel. One after the other, both the Apex Bank governor and the Minister of Finance highlight the government's steps to boost the economy.
What we put on the table is that we will extend our intervention to areas like logistics. A large problem of the problem that we have today is delivering our food from farm to markets. We'll be looking at intervening in whatever needs to be done to move food and food products from farm to market.
Some sectors of the economy were already weak before the crisis, so the crisis is only exacerbating the situation, and we knew about that. And we're working at dimensioning each sector and fashioning out and prioritizing the sectors, how best to provide fiscal incentives for the sectors to grow.
In his address to participants, the group managing director of the NNPC paints a gloomy picture of the global shock in the oil market and why Nigeria must act fast.
When your crude oil sells at $30 and you are dropping it by $8, it means that in the market, you are selling it at $22. And that's a huge problem.
Getting the economy working will require efforts from government. For most industrialists, how to provide infrastructure and cutting down cost of doing business must be examined all over again.
Cost of doing business can actually affect everybody. I mean, to tell you the truth, government lost so much money last year in the traffic logjam of Apapa alone. We as a company, actually our 3 companies lost over 30 billion in terms of, profit, which also the government will collect less taxes from us.
Thank you very much.
Key resolutions were reached at the end of the discussion. These include increased funding for infrastructure, investment in the nation's pharmaceutical industry, cut down medical tourism, and processing opportunities for farmers. Nigerians are, however, watching to see if these suggestions will be implemented in the days ahead.
Welcome back. Well, we've got 2 gentlemen here with us to weigh in on the matter. Mr. Degun Agbade is the president, Nigeria Association of Small and Medium Enterprises, that's NASME, and Kolaye is an economist and the CEO of GDL Asset Management Limited. Gentlemen, thank you for coming this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Well, what's going to happen to these assets that your company will manage in the light of all of this? There will certainly be challenges. Do you anticipate this?
Well, I don't think you can always predict the oil market. I think the oil market is one that always proves the bookmakers wrong. I remember the last major oil crash. A few months before that, people were saying we could see $120 oil before the end of the year. And before the end of the year, it was $30 or $35. But all that prudent people do is to look at scenarios and plan your portfolio in such a way that if a very unfavorable scenario happens, you are able to cushion it. So what an asset manager will do, or in managing your asset, you will have said, okay, let's assume things go as they are normal. But what if there is a major crash? So if you're in a position to diversify your portfolio to hedge against the consequences of a situation like this, you probably will have done it a little before now.
Which is part of the conversation they're having, that diversification. But Mr. Agbade, I mean, some of the scenarios that some people see, they talk about mass sack. Some of the dailies, NNPC warning Nigerians, look, you have to prepare for some of these tough times ahead. But from your perspective, looking at the conversations that they had, some of the recommendations, where do you see this headed for us?
I wouldn't say it's alarming, but there is cause for concern. The issue of MSMEs, we've been paying lip service for these years. And we know that even when you work for government, like I did for private sector, one day will be one day you bear your father's name. You come to do a business that will make you survive. So it's not new. Like my colleague said, if oil is what we all depend on, we drink it, we eat it, and all that. And there is a clink somewhere, somehow, like we have now, as a result of the coronavirus, and also what is happening, which shows that the future is not all that.
Now, they may have had that conversation, but what key things do you think that we should actually be addressing?
Well, first, I feel we should learn to eat what we plant and use what we manufacture, in my view. You see, and this is a long journey. We cannot do it overnight. But if a system that depends purely entirely on foreign importation, look at it, the drugs that we use, okay, even the cloth we wear. And of recent, the only area that we can say we've made some improvement or impact is agric. And like somebody said, all of us cannot be in the agric sector. And government in that area is trying, but it's like a drop in the ocean, you know, because there are still other areas that needed to be addressed.
There have been efforts over the years, no doubt. I'm sure you are also aware of it. The Obasanjo government of 79, 77, 78, 79 talked about Operation Feed the Nation. When that government went out of office, it seemed like that policy went with it. Then the government of Babangida came back and tried to do something about rural infrastructure and a better life for rural women, paid a lot of attention to agriculture. When that government also went out of office, that policy went with it. And then, of course, 1999, Obasanjo came back with the Fourth Republic, and that conversation about diversification back to agriculture as we had it in the 60s also came back into conversations. And how well are we doing over this? It seems like it's one government, one policy, one government, one policy. We seem to have a problem of consistency there. You've talked about us consuming what we produce. How serious are we about that?
I will say it appears we're paying lip service most of the time. We have not seen concrete on ground to show that we mean what we are saying and that we are moving towards achieving that goal. Yes, like you said, it appears now one government, one program. No continuity. There's always a break. And when you are moving in one direction for whatever reason, political or any other reason, you break. To start all over again, you go to square one. So that's my view.
Mr. A, yesterday at the Going for Growth 2.0 of the CBN, the finance minister said we need to begin to look at Nigeria beyond oil. Do you see that happening, and what must we do? Because clearly we benchmarked against $57 per litre. Now we're struggling with $30 per litre of our mainstay.
That's per barrel?
Yeah, per barrel, beg your pardon.
Okay, I think we shouldn't panic. But I think we shouldn't deceive ourselves by saying there is no cause for concern. I don't think there's any organization in the world or any individual who will be faced with the prospect of a reduction of between 30 to 50% in your revenue or your income. and you say there is no cause for concern. There's cause for concern. Don't be alarmed, because alarm or panic won't solve the problem. But there is a problem, and that problem needs to be addressed. Now, one simple thing about reduction on income is that people who have saved, whether you're an individual, a company, or a nation, who have saved before there is a crisis, you are better positioned because you have the buffers. One of the things we should do is to recognize that we need to institutionalize the process of creating buffers. And the way we've tried to do it up till date has not recognized that we're a federation. You see, the federal government can't compel states to save. So let's make it part of our laws that when the oil price, let's have a regime where, based on a number of parameters, we're able to say, when the oil price gets to this rate, this is how much the federal government is obliged to save out of its own revenues. So let's first of all ensure that we don't repeat this error. That doesn't solve the problem on hand, but it's important. You see, it's when there is a situation like this you can do it. The second thing, you remember the last time at the inception of the Buhari regime, the oil prices were very low, and the government had to give the states a lot of bailout. There must be a price to giving states bailout. So the second part of that institutionalization is saying states that at any point want to come to federal government for bailout must sign up to this institutionalization, i.e., so that they also go and pass the laws that says that when the oil price gets to this level, this is how much of our revenues that we save. So that's one part. But now we're facing an emergency that income is reducing. What do? We need to look at, are there some things we should have done?
If we make laws on how much we should save, are we going to also make laws about how much we should spend from the savings?
No, the good thing about, I mean, you have to think it through.
Because, I mean, in the past, they saved a bit. And then eventually they said, look, you can't be saving this money when people need infrastructure, they need services, you need to provide them with the same funds. They argue that way. What do we do in that case?
I think very logical argument. But when you are saving, the thinking through will include thresholds. Where does it get to before we start to release? But what you don't want is this situation where you are faced with $30 oil or $32 oil, and you're saying, where are the funds to cushion you? And most states, and even the federal government, does not.
We'll still come to the aspect of those states, but Mr. Agbade, in the same breath, the Minister of Finance also did say, look, we have to take advantage of the opportunity at this point in time. Yes, the coronavirus causing a hit on several economies the world over. And then she did say that they're also trying to see how they can provide financial incentives for the microeconomy, the MSMEs, yes, which is where you come in.
Yes.
So that's why we did ask, look, what kind of specific challenges, how should this be approached in order for us? Because, I mean, we know the importance of MSMEs.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a good news. I had it, and it's not new anyway, but we hope it will not go the same way. Now, that
same way as well.
A lot of promises or programs, or they call it windows, financial windows, which may not open, So this one is a good news, and what we are suggesting to government is, let's review the way we've been doing it in the past. We've not gotten much impact. Well, how can we do it differently? You can't be doing the same thing.
So what did you do before that was not right? What should we change now?
One of those things is that the CBN has a lot of platforms, programs for MSMEs. The question is how many of us MSMEs have accessed that fund?
How many? You?
No. That's the question. So from our side, the number is very infinitesimal, no impact.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is?
There are lots of bottlenecks lot of paperwork. I had it in one of the last programs, just a few minutes. There is one of the research carried out by Association of Accountants of Nigeria with Faith Foundation. One of the key findings is that 75% of MSMEs, say that they don't want, they don't take loan because of cumbersome paperwork. The facts are there. So if you have to ask for everything in your life, and the way you are bringing, the time you are bringing it, another one will come in, bring this, bring that. So at the end of the day,
I'm trying to understand, the picture. When you say the figure was too small, could you give us an idea what was the percentage that you refer to as being too small? And for those of them who were able to access those loans, what did they do right? What did they get right that all the others couldn't?
Well, I don't have the statistics to say this percentage, but okay. What I know is that in the agri sector, yes, the government is making impact with the program of funding of MSMEs, because there are funds that are targeted towards products or agri items. But in other areas, except of recent, they said they put some amount for fund for starters, the startups. Those ones we don't have the record of.
Okay, but when for instance, there are different sectors that the CBN provides these funds for. They've got the Bank of Industry, there's a Bank of Agri, and then the Anchor Borrowers Program. I think they work with states on that one. So is it for the Anchor Borrowers Program that they have to do with states? Do MSMEs have challenges accessing the funds from states? What are those challenges and how can we address them, for instance? Do you have any information on that?
Yes. I mean, fine. The problems are there. If you say, come for training, our people will go for training. At the end of the training, the scenario may change. Go and bring, for instance, there is this one that is being done now by Central Bank, which they call our people to come and enroll for training. A lot of them, even in Lagos here, disbursement is what many of them are waiting for.
Yeah, but what conditions were they given? Because nobody will give money without you having some formal.
And we are not saying they should do Father Christmas.
Yeah, so what are the challenges that they face specifically so they can address
I wouldn't know what their challenges are, but we know we have not received. And if this thing is meant for us and we have not received, then how do you do it?
Does your association have a corporate representation with any government agency on this matter?
Yes. We have relationship with, like Sweden, the government side of small and medium enterprise.
I'm trying to ask if your members go to government agencies through the National Association of Small and Medium Enterprises, because maybe then you'll be able to have these solid figures and they will be able to give you feedback that these are the kind of challenges that they have. Because unless, one is able to identify the challenges, how do we proffer solutions?
I get your point. The associations, not only Nigerian Association of Small and Medium Enterprise, which I have the privilege to chair, to be president now, there are many of such associations. The challenge is that the bank will want probably the groups to come and guarantee, the association to come and guarantee the loan. We cannot. We have our own businesses, and of course, the addresses, like you know too well, small businesses. Today they are here, tomorrow they may not be there.
So that could also be one of the challenges, Mr. You want to weigh in on this? That could also be one of the challenges that...
talking about small and medium-scale enterprises, I think this issue once came up. I think that it's generally accepted that small, medium, micro enterprises are an important part of economic development. But I think one thing I think it's better for us to focus on is getting the economy to work. I think that it is not proven that small and medium scale enterprises alone on their own are what solves the economic problems. You see, I remember once on this program, we pointed out that in a number of countries, the things that actually pull small and medium scale enterprises up is the existence of large successful enterprises. Let me give you an example. You see, these companies that are looking for credit, and credit is important. When 10 or 15 of those companies get large orders from big companies, they don't even need anybody's guarantee again. Those financial institutions will start running after them. And like I said, when you go to Detroit or the car zones in any parts of the world, the reason why you see small and medium scale enterprises thriving is because they are the big companies that provide them offtake. For too long, there's been this disconnect about the importance of large enterprises for small enterprises. In fact, globally, one of the biggest things that small enterprises need is not only funding, it's access to market. And one of the best ways to give them market is to have large institutions, large organizations.
But how do you ensure that, Mr. Yeye, when, according to Dangote and the number of people who attended the CBN roundtable yesterday, most of the things that they need are imported?
So, essentially,
they are putting a big question mark on quality of some of the things that they need to be able to produce what they need. You know, the quality of what the local companies produce.
You know what I'm saying is that the fundamentals is let's get the economy to work. You see, the economy that is not working well.
So how do we get the economy to work?
I'll come to that.
For the SMEs to thrive.
That's the point. You see, the economy that does not work for big companies, who work for small companies, who work for medium-sized companies. You see, this conversation that tends to put the SMEs in a silo. You know, we've done it for about 30 years. We've harped and sang and sung about their importance, and they're very important because they employ a lot of people. They're closer to the people. But the entire economy has to work. I mean, as Bill Clinton said, a high tide lifts everybody. See, let me give you an example. As tough as things are, when Dangote Industries says these 50 people are my distributors, the banks are knocking down the doors of those distributors to finance them. When Dangote Industries says at the site where I'm building the refinery, that is 100 companies are subcontractors doing different small things. So you see, the big issue is that the economy isn't working well. We shouldn't deceive ourselves by thinking that if the economy is like this, that is going to be easy for the SMEs.
I ask the question: what are the things that are not making the economy work now, and what do we need to do to make it work?
Okay, if you permit me, where we are at now, because you know we are also faced with this issue of the crash in oil prices. I think there are some things we should have done before now that we need to face. Listen, coronavirus came to add a big problem. But before the coronavirus, the insecurity in the country, this government needs to deal with it decisively. I don't know whether you have checked. In the last couple of years, the number of migrations that we are having is moving even to segments of young people who have good jobs. That's unprecedented. You know, before, people will migrate because they don't have work. You're now having instances where young people are leaving. So you need to deal decisively with insecurity. If we had statistics of the number of Nigerians who, well-off Nigerians, who in the last 2 or 3 years have had the need to invest in a second passport, those numbers are scary. So government must deal decisively with insecurity. The second thing we should have done before this is we can no longer afford the oil subsidy. Believe me, Ayo, I think a government owes a duty to subsidize something. I am a believer in subsidy. It is no longer affordable. That's the second thing. A third thing is we can also no longer afford multiple exchange rates. You see, we didn't have to wait for coronavirus to deal with these issues. But now that coronavirus has happened, we need to deal with it. The other things we need to quickly ask ourselves, which is recent, is a country that starts to panic simply because oil price has moved. Should that country borrow $20 billion? Please, I want you to note that $20 billion is not a Naira loan. That even if government has Naira to pay back those loans and does not have dollars, we're going to be in default. We need to also use the platform, the fortuitous platform of this sudden reduction in oil revenue close to when we have just approved a $27 or $22 billion loan to say, should we borrow $20 billion in a country that for close to 50 years has failed to diversify its sources of foreign exchange?
But the argument is, how do we fund the budget if not, if we don't borrow?
And that is the point. You see, the point is that we cannot have it. It is not government that should lead the charge in economic development. If you summarize a $22 billion loan, you can put it this way. It is a loan-funded, government-led infrastructure and economic development model. No, let us position the economy for the private sector on PPP and other basis to come and do this. Please, let me make one appeal as we rest it. I remember the 80s. For a period of 25 years, this economy was in a debt trap. No Nigerian bank could open a letter of credit except it was fully cash collateralized. I fear that $25 billion in additional debt will put us back there. We will soon get to a situation where we will have debt arrears and the foreign banks will call their credit lines. We need $25 billion, $50 billion, $100 billion, $200 billion of inflow. Let it be investment. Let it come from the private sector. Let it not be debt. Rail is compelling. Why must we borrow? Why must government borrow $12 billion to do rail? It is not because rail is not important. It is, there are projects that are important in your home, but you can't afford it. It's not because it's not compelling. We can't borrow $12 billion to do rail.
How do we move goods and services if we don't have some of these facilities?
So, that's my point. My point is not that the projects are not important. My point is that position yourself for those who can execute the projects efficiently and ensure that it gets repaid.
We'll let you tell us a lot more. We'll get your response as well when we come back in just a moment. Stay with us.
What it means for our country and what it also means to the oil markets is that the best of the people who will remain are the people who will produce oil at the cheapest cost. And until you do that, the oil markets will run without you and your economies will go aground. In our situation, we have expectations, we have plans, honorable ministers here. The belief is that we can take our production to 3 million barrels per day. It's very possible. Also to shift our reserve from our current status of 36 to 37 to 40 billion barrels in the next 2 to 3 years. It is also possible. Much as these are very high expectations and very possible expectations, but you must produce them today, even at low prices. And the markets operate in such a way that we don't know what tomorrow will bring. The assumptions for this year was $60 crude oil price throughout this year as an average. Now we are facing sub 30 oil, and potentially we haven't seen the bottom. We hope not. We hope we have seen the bottom. But if it is not, it's a huge challenge which the Mr. Governor has highlighted, that it creates a circle of problems for us as a country.
Welcome back. Our concluding moments now. You were making the point about how we need to proceed with this loan facility. Yes, you say some needs can be there, but what should we then do?
We should position ourselves for the right people to fund it. In terms of conclusion, like I said, this drop in oil price shows us our vulnerabilities when it comes to exposing ourselves to foreign debt. So I think this should tell us that debt is not the way to go. The projects need to be funded. Let's put the economy in a position where private investors can do most of the funding. One, as I said before,
funding for this particular rail project or general projects?
For a lot of those projects, all those infrastructure projects, you see, when you look at the list of those infrastructure projects, you should ask yourself one question. Which of these projects will directly result in generation of foreign currency with which we can pay back these loans? There's not one. You can't do that You can't take dollar loans where it's not clear.
But for the real sector, I mean, we had the minister, and he did point out, look, globally, which private sector doesn't just invest in real sector like that. It's usually government that has to provide all of this. I mean, there are even recent countries that government has, they keep doing some of this. And so, are you saying private sector to fund this wholly or in the operations alone?
Let's get creative. Listen, globally, government funds the tracks. Private sector funds the rolling stock. What I'm saying is that we have seen that government here is an inefficient spender. Several years ago, even the rolling stock used to be government. We must design things based on our experience. So let's take that one step further and create a package, with the incentives and the subsidies and the payments over time that will make it private sector that will do the tracks and the rolling stock. It's a matter of returns. See, what I'm saying is, if there's $30 or $40 billion of infrastructure spend in Nigeria, our experience clearly shows that spend is better done by private sector rather than government.
Thank you so much. I just want to add to what my colleague said. Business linkage with small and medium enterprise is key in any system. But part of our problems, if you look at the statistics, the record we have on ground says we have 41.5 MSMEs in Nigeria as of December 2018.
That's 41.5 million.
41.5 million. Right. Out of this, 41.4 it belongs to, are those that are not registered. Okay? That is, they do business freelance like that. They are not captured by TaxNet. They don't have permanent address. So you will now see where the problems comes from.
That's why they can't access those loans?
No, if you go to the bank and you don't have a business registration, what do you use to take loan?
But I thought the process has been simplified for them to
simplified, but how many people are going there to do it? A lot of people see it as a ploy to bring them to TaxNet. And they are now saying that we don't want. So
they don't want to pay tax, or they don't want
to register.
So that not to pay tax.
Exactly. Yes, like that. The cost was brought down from 10,000 to 5,000. Still,
so, I don't understand.
Cost of registration of business.
Yeah.
So what we need to tackle really is how do we formalize the informal sector? If you are not formalized, you can't access it.
But before you move on to that, so if that's the thinking, that they don't want to go and get registered so as not to pay tax, one, how do they then access government facilities? Is it that they don't think that the tax is meant to also provide the infrastructure for them to do business as well?
That's a question of which comes first, the hen or the chicken, or the egg. So the point we are making is that an average Nigerian, not necessarily MSME person, we don't want to pay tax. Is it not true? So
it's not a Nigerian thing. I mean,
average. Okay. So now it's now more prominent in MSMEs.
But what then is the role of the small and medium enterprises development, agency? That's a government agency. If this problem has persisted for so long, 41 million plus MSMEs
in Nigeria, and just 99.8 belong to unregistered. The small, medium, micro, small, and medium. Just 1 second. Micro, small, and medium. Okay. They can easily track the small. They can easily track the medium. The majority, which is 99.8, are unregistered. And if you look at it from that point, you can't do anything if you don't have a registered name as a company.
Yeah. Intervention. It comes to the point of ensuring we test the things that we believe. For example, microfinance banks are by their structure meant to support micro enterprises, and it is celebrated. But have you wondered why, with all its celebration, microfinance is not a visible part of a financial system in Europe and in America? See, the fact of a micro enterprise whose daily turnover is 2,000 is a demonstration of the existence of poverty.
Are you saying that that doesn't exist, or they exist in different formats in those economies? Because they do exist, funding those scale of businesses.
The extent to which they exist and the extent to which we are being expected to celebrate them is an exaggeration. That's what I'm saying.
What do you mean I want to celebrate them?
You see, look at Bangladesh, the world's most celebrated case of SME, of microfinance. Why hasn't that propelled Bangladesh to the top 10 in the world? So here's what I'm saying. We must give the weak, and we must give SMEs and micros the support. But just as he was talking about linkage, it means you are thinking about how to link the enterprises to the entire economy. It happens when the economy works very well. It happens when the economy works very well. So I'm saying that the things that we speak on for years and no change happens should make us think about whether our fundamental assumptions.
So how do you deal with the fact that if you're supposed to get yourself registered such that you can access some of those facilities, and he thinks that, look, the thinking is that they don't want to get registered, so they don't want to pay tax.
Well, clearly that needs education. They need to be clearly they need to be educated and needs to be corrected. But you know what I'm saying to you is that, see, the evidence of success in an economy is that over time the number of micro enterprises which should be registered will start reducing. Okay. They will start migrating up to become small and medium. Because in all of these other economies, that is the way it is.
All right, let's wind down.
Just to conclude what the point I was making, what the government should do now, we can't leave that scenario the way it is. We need to find a way to formalize the informal sector. The advantages are many. They'll be able to come to the task net. How do you do it? That's what the question was. Is it by carrot or by stick or combination of both? You need to make paying tax more interesting, more, people are willing to pay.
Yeah, but people need to see the reason why they should
pay
those taxes.
Part of what you said. You know, these are people not very educated. We need to educate ourselves.
Even the educated ones too. The reasons why they should pay those taxes, the authorities need to show them with infrastructure development in their localities.
So, and also some of them, a small portion will still say, the one we pay. What did we see it?
That's normal.
Yes, I'm only, but that is not the end of the road. I'm positive that if government takes some measures to bring all these small and medium enterprise to even register, to have an address, there's nothing you can't take any money if the bank doesn't know your address.
Yeah, and perhaps stiffer laws for public officials who, if they're dealing with public funds, there needs to be a lot more strict in terms of what they do with public funds, because people need to be able to ask questions of them, and they should be able to answer those questions. But we thank you, gentlemen, for coming on this morning. Kolaye, an economist and also CEO of GDL Assets Management, as well as Mr. Degun Agbade, who is the president, Nigeria Association of Small and Medium Enterprises. So now we know the authorities to do something to ensure that they get them to pay tax so they can access those financial incentives that the authorities want to provide. Yeah, we'll move on to another matter now, but that will be in a moment.